How's everybody doing? I'm Jay Elson, and this is Coyote Corner. Football had the week off, so we start this week with volleyball. One huge reason for South Dakota's outstanding start this year is the play and leadership of junior setter Brittany Jessen. For more on what makes the Mendota Heights, Minnesota native so special, here's Kelly Stewart.
Players like Brittany Jessen don't come around that often. As the starting setter for the Coyotes, she assumes a natural leadership position. And it's no secret that she has a lot to do with South Dakota's outstanding start to the season. But if you ask her, it's about we, not me.
I think we've been approaching practice with a lot more passion, definitely. Like, we're all on the same page about our goals of course, winning the Summit League and even getting farther than that. And we're just really taking that into each day of practice, which has helped us a lot.
But even before this already historic season started, Jessen was constantly working to get better. In fact, this past spring, she earned a spot on the U.S. Collegiate National Team and competed with them in a tournament in Indianapolis. Jessen was one of 36 players selected after a national tryout, only one of 6 setters, and the only Summit League player chosen to compete in the program.
And it was a really nice surprise to be selected. I only found out a couple weeks before leaving, so that was super exciting and really frantic to get going. But yeah, it was absolutely amazing to be there. The coaching staff was so good, and I just learned a ton from them. And then the girls are just so good at everything they do and at playing, and it was just awesome to be able to play at a high level with them.
Jessen's play has only elevated since Indianapolis, and she's taken what she learned on the national stage right back to South Dakota.
In the USA gym, we did really fast-paced drills and really intense setting combinations and crazy plays, and I think learning how to expand my comfort zone in that helped me to bring that to our gym and kind of do some of those drills, as well as just keep the intensity up in the gym the whole time.
And from a coaching standpoint, Leanne Williamson thoroughly enjoys having essentially another coach out on the floor.
Her teammates really trust her. They know that she's got the team's best interests at heart every single time she steps on the floor, whether it's practice or a game. I think she also gives people a little bit of a calming influence. She has a very good way of calming our hitters down if they're making errors or if they're having a hard time struggling. She finds different ways to get them involved.
With still another year of eligibility left, the future is bright for Coyote Volleyball.
She's a big part of who we are, and we're definitely lucky to have her.
Obviously an extremely talented player that brings so much to the team on and off the court. And as just a junior, Jessen is already 5th all-time on South Dakota's career assist list, Jay.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Well, Jessen has certainly played well, but it's taken a collective effort to achieve the best start in the Division I era. We'll have more on that with head coach Leanne Williamson after this.
Coyote Corner on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, Dakota Land Honda, and your Core Trust Bank.
Well, the first few weeks of the 2016 season were awfully good for South Dakota Volleyball as the Coyotes put together the best start of the Division I era. They lost the first and the last games in that stretch, but in the middle, there was an impressive 11-match winning streak. And here to talk a little bit more about all that is third-year head coach Leanne Williams. And Leanne, first question, pretty simple. How much fun have you had the past few weeks?
It's hard to describe. I mean, it's fun every day in practice. It's been, I think, very intense from day one. So coming into the gym, we kind of always know what we're going to get out of our team, which is a good change, even just from the past couple years. And yeah, I mean, it's hard to beat an 11-2 start.
No, were you surprised at all by the way things started, or did you see something in this team in the preseason that led you to believe, hey, this might be a pretty special group?
Yeah, I actually think summer I started to think about that, just who we had coming back, who we had coming in, and starting to, put together a little bit on paper, what our roster really looked like. And, we felt like we were a pretty deep team. And, I kept telling people this could be a really special team. You never know until you hit the floor, till you see them practicing and competing day in and day out. But I had an idea that it could be a good year for us. And once we hit preseason and kind of got going with that in 2.5 weeks of practice, I mean, it was night and day from just I think from the consistency standpoint in the past. And so I think that gave us a good idea that it was going to be a positive year for us.
Is there anything in terms when you're noticing things like that from an atmospheric standpoint and just energy within your room, things like that help you draw that kind of conclusion?
Definitely. I mean, they brought their own energy every day. It wasn't me sitting on the sideline kind of helping them through those. They also pushed each other from the beginning. You know, we knew that we were deep, and I think the team also bought into the fact that we're deep, and they knew that anybody could start on any given day. And, you know, even at this point in time, you know, you never know what the lineup is going to be until maybe a couple days before. And, you know, even going into matches, they know that changes can be made, and it's not necessarily a negative this year, you know. I think getting pulled out can be tough at times, but they understand that it's for the good of the team and that there's somebody else that can come in and do something really positive. And I think that that idea, you know, that thought as a team that everybody's bought in, you know, that all-in mentality has helped us through.
Well, you certainly knew what you had coming back in players like Brittany Jessen and Audrey Rieg. In fact, I think most of us knew what you had in those two young ladies. But let's take a minute to focus on the rest of the team. To this point, outside of those two, who have been the biggest difference makers?
You know, it's hard to fully answer that. You know, I think that's also where that depth comes in, is we've got multiple people that have stepped in at different times, different matches. You know, Elizabeth Lotion as a freshman has come in and does some really nice things for us on the right side. She puts up a good block. She's found her offensive kind of capabilities in certain matches, and I think for weekends. And yet she's still a freshman, so she's made a couple errors along the way, but other people have stepped up in those situations. Kelly Law, for example, has come in and hasn't played a huge role for us in the past, but you know, ended up being a really go-to player for us in a lot of this preseason. And then both of our, you know, outsides, Rachel Schmidt and Haley Dotseth, have split time a little bit, and you know, they have really bought into the fact that each of them kind of contributes a little bit differently. So depending on what the matchup is, they can both come in and have a lot of success. But I think the other person I want to point out is Lauren Madison, our libero. She's been kind of a consistent factor in the back row. She's kept a lot more balls off the floor than what we've seen in the past. She's gotten us in system and serve receive, and she's really a leader on the floor. I mean, she's the one that's always communicating. She's the one that's kind of telling people when we're doing things wrong, and yet she's the hitter's biggest cheerleader at times. You know, when they get a kill, they get a big block. She's the one that's jumping off the floor a lot of times, and I think it's a good round off of our roster.
How did the non-conference season that you put together, the scheduling and the success, how does that prepare you for the Summer League?
I mean, we always want to schedule difficult. We want to challenge ourselves both in mid-major teams that have always had success, and then also kind of playing some higher major teams as well. So I think we played a good mixture of teams that really challenged us and maybe showed us more of what we weren't good at. That's what great teams do, is they challenge you and they show you your weaknesses. But then we also played some other teams that I think prepared us for a little bit more of confidence. And I think even just looking at, you know, a couple weeks ago with Iowa and Lamar, you know, Lamar maybe being a little bit more similar to some of our conference opponents, and then playing, you know, Iowa, a higher level team. That's what conference is going to look like at times too, depending on who you're playing, both a Friday and a Sunday, and it gives you kind of the ability to switch depending on what the matchup is, what the other team is doing. And I think we feel very comfortable with the types of teams that we've played and what we've been able to learn from it.
In the preseason, you were picked 5th in the Summit League. Now that you're entering conference play, any extra motivation with that, given how hot you are going in?
I think maybe looking back now, yeah. When I first saw that come out, I wasn't surprised. You know, I don't think we had proven ourselves to be a team that should have been picked higher. And to be honest, until you brought that up, I kind of forgot about it, because we've really been taking it. We've been taking it one day at a time, and just trying to constantly improve. But I think going into it, I think they feel like they have something to prove, and maybe not so much of being picked 5th, but even just from the past of where we finished in the past couple years, and how hungry they are for more.
Well, Leanne, congrats on a great start. Best of luck in conference play. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, well, speaking of conference play, the South Dakota football team getting set to kick off its Valley slate this weekend at Youngstown State. But before they do, we want to get a quick midterm assessment. Head coach Bob Nielsen will give us a hand with that when we come back. Well, no game to recap this week, so instead we're going to spend some time assessing where things stand at this point of the season. Of course, there's no one more qualified to help us out with that than head coach Bob Nielsen. He joins me now down at the Dakota Dome. And Bob, bye weeks are supposed to allow for some rest and recuperation, but let's be honest, all that stuff's for the players, right? The coaches don't get much of a break. So is there a routine that you've gotten into, you and your staff, during a bye week?
Yeah, you know, we always have a bye week within the conference schedule in the Missouri Valley, which is a little bit different than some of the other leagues that I've coached in. And so what we've tried to do in the bye week is really 3 things. Number one, get a jump start on preparation for Youngstown. 2 is to go back and really work on some things fundamentally that haven't come along to the point where we'd like them to be. And the third thing is you use it from a staff standpoint to do some recruiting work. And so a number of our staff members have been out this week.
All right. Well, this time also serves as something of an evaluation period. And as I mentioned earlier, that's kind of exactly what we're looking to do here today. So let's start with this. As things stand, how close is this team to where you were hoping it would be coming into the conference season?
Well, we'd certainly like to have another win under our belt. The team has improved. We've got some areas that we're still not where we need to be. I think we're capable of playing better defensively than we have so far this year, and offensively we've got to eliminate turnovers. That's been a big problem for us, and a problem that's really cost us a game.
What are your biggest concerns at this point? Is it pretty much that, or are there other things that you'd like to see improve dramatically?
Well, we got to throw the football better and more consistently. Even though our completion percentage looks good, I don't think we've thrown the ball downfield effectively enough. And in order for us to be a balanced football team, that's something we're going to have to be able to do. And defensively, we've got to eliminate big plays, and we've given up too many of those.
Which individuals to this point or position groups have maybe exceeded your expectations?
I think, we knew the offensive line was going to be a work in progress. Those guys have come along. Obviously, we've got to keep that group healthy because of our depth. That group maybe would be one that is a little bit further ahead than what we think they might have been at this point in time. Otherwise, I think we've got a ways to go with a number of our groups.
Now, which positions would you like to see more of, or is it pretty much that? It's other than the offensive line, it's everybody.
Yeah, the linebacker core, we've shuffled some people around, and obviously the loss of John Wessels there has caused us to do that. I think we've made some significant gains there over the bye week, and hopefully you'll see some difference as we move into the conference schedule.
Okay, well, the conference, or the quarterback spot rather, got a lot of attention in the preseason, but Chris Trevler's literally taken that job and run with it. How would you sum up his performance to this point? Are you pleased with the progress he's shown from week 1 till now?
He's improving every week. You have to remember he's experienced in terms of the actual number of snaps that he's taken as a quarterback, and the thing with Chris, he's a guy that's going to generate a lot of big plays. What we've got to try to do is minimize the mistakes, and in so doing, he's going to become an even more effective football player. 60%
of his passes completed so far, 507 yards, 9 touchdowns against just 3 interceptions. Those have all hurt. He's also leading the way on the ground, where he's averaged about 116 yards per game for you so far. But because he is so active, he's also taken a lot of hits. So he's also inflicted quite a few because he's such a physical runner. But with all that in mind, is there any concern about the ability to keep him healthy through an entire 11-game season?
Well, we've got to make sure that in our run schemes that we're not running him just to run him. We've got to have the opportunity to create a man advantage. That's what quarterback run is designed to do, and I think against North Dakota, we didn't do a real good job of that scheme-wise, and as a result, he took some extra hits. And running quarterbacks are going to take hits. Passing quarterbacks take a lot of hits as well, and so we've got to have a little bit better balance there in how we use him as a runner.
Do you think Trevor has been effective as well, just under 4 yards per carry? Does him getting going and getting a little bit more room to work, does that kind of take some of that pressure off of Chris?
Yeah, we've got to find ways to run the football without using quarterback run, and Trevor's been effective. I think we can get more out of that running back position group, and that's been a point of emphasis here over the bye week last week.
All right, defensively, you mentioned it a little bit. It's been kind of a work in progress. Certainly some improvement to this point. I don't think anybody can argue that, but what are the points of emphasis specifically for that group as you move forward?
We've just got to continue to work on, playing defense against the rush. We're giving up well over 200 yards a game from a rushing standpoint, and you're going to have a hard time winning the Missouri Valley unless you can play better rush defense. That and continuing to work on generating some turnovers and field position through our defense, which is something that we haven't done a tremendous job of so far.
Okay, well, finally, we've got to mention special teams, and specifically the kicking game. Miles Bergner has been pretty lights out for you. He's been perfect on field goals, extra points. He also ranks second in the country in punting average, just under 48 yards per kick for him right now. How valuable is it to have a guy that can not only handle both of those jobs for you, but also be able to do it at such a high level?
It's pretty unique. Pretty unique to have a guy that does both things as well as he's done this year, and honestly, a guy that you can use as a weapon. Both from making long field goals and also from punting the ball and changing field position.
All right, well, thanks so much again for your time, Bob, and good luck at Youngstown State. We'll see you back here next week.
Thanks.
All right, well, we're not the only ones paying close attention to the Coyotes this season. Coming up, Mick Gary from Argus Leader Media is going to weigh in on what he's seen so far in a special bye-week edition of Saturday's Storylines. As South Dakota gets set to begin its annual trek through the Missouri Valley Football Conference, we want to skim the storylines that have presented themselves through 3 games. We've heard from the head coach. Now it's time for some extra perspective from a guy that's written about a few of those storylines. He is Mick Gary, and he covers the Coyotes for Argus Leader Media. Mick, the quarterback position dominated the headlines in the preseason. That hasn't changed. The difference is now we're talking about one guy instead of 3 guys. Chris Streveler, very obviously the man at this point. How's he measured up to your expectations?
Well, I anticipated he was going to be a really good runner, and he's not really good. He's great. He's an outstanding runner from that spot, and really made an impact on the team and on the offense there. Struggling with some poor decisions once in a while. He's got 3 touchdowns going the other way on interceptions, and they've figured in the outcome of at least 1 game here. So that's the tough part of it. But overall, you have to say that who's the offensive MVP so far? It's that kid. He's a playmaker, and if he gets past the line of scrimmage, it's a lot of times it's not that 12-yard gain that a quarterback gets. It's all the way. Yeah. And a really tough kid. And that part we didn't know about. But, man, he takes some shots and he gets up. And I would think, you see the body language out there and how competitive that kid is. And you could see that leadership is going to be a part of the package with him.
Absolutely. Well, another curiosity we had through fall camp was how quickly Bob Nielsen's up-tempo offense was going to get up to speed. Well, there's certainly been some ups and downs, but the impact has definitely been measurable to this point, don't you think?
Yeah. You can really see how relentless that offense can be when it's running right, and you can see how difficult it is for a defense to just kind of keep track of what's going on and keep their energy level up. And it really probably figures, I think, in a lot of the big plays they've had this year, which was a struggle the last couple of years to really get those big plays. And now we've seen several of them in the first 3 games, which I would think would be promising, and it was something they were trying to accomplish going into the season, is that they needed to get guys loose once in a while for scores. You can't your drives can't be 17 plays every time.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think 3 touchdowns to this point have been under 10 yards. The rest have been of the quote-unquote explosive variety, and it's entertaining, if nothing else, and we'll see. Obviously, if it continues. Well, individually, we've talked about Streveler now. It's impossible to ignore what he's meant to this team statistically, but there's been a few other players that have made significant contributions over the first 3 games. Who stood out to you?
Adam Harris looks like he's one of those players that you're going to have on your team to win upper division games in the conference. He looks like he's kind of one of those guys who's going to be an all-conference level player this year and certainly next year. Number 1, you have Shamar Jackson. Really looks like he's got a knack for catching the ball and is going to be one of those guys. Quarterback can throw it up to him with some level of confidence, thinking he's got the capacity to make a lot of big plays.
Danny Rambo, got to throw him in that mix too, right?
Really see some good instincts out of him at that corner spot. Not a huge guy, but not afraid to knock a guy down.
He's got Main Street, yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely got that instinct where he can deliver a blow to a guy, in addition to being a good cover guy.
Absolutely. All right. Well, good stuff, Mick. Thank you for your time. Be sure to check out the Argus Leader for more great Coyote coverage by this guy. Of course, you can also follow him on Twitter at Mick Gary. Well, as we mentioned earlier, South Dakota set to kick off the conference season Saturday at Youngstown State. We'll preview the matchup with Pelini and the Penguins next.
Coyote Corner on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, Dakota Land Honda, and your Core Trust Bank.
And welcome back. Well, the sting of the North Dakota loss still hasn't completely worn off, but the bye week did give the Coyotes time to overcome the emotion that was attached to it. That's important because South Dakota is definitely going to need all its wits about them this Saturday when they visit Youngstown State.
On the defensive side, they have some of the best defensive personnel that we'll play against all year. Big physical. They have 9 starters on the defense that are seniors. So when you have that kind of experience in your defense, you're going to be a really good defensive football team. Offensively, they're very multiple. They want to run the football, but yet are really good at using the quarterback in the running game and also using the quarterback throwing the football off of play action. So we're going to have to defend the field and do a good job of stopping the run first.
South Dakota's struggles against the Valley have been well documented, though things have been particularly tough away from home. The Coyotes have won just 2 of 16 road games since joining the league in 2012. But Nielsen believes that tide can start to turn with a tone-setting performance against the Penguins.
You got to establish a competitive level that you're able to compete with the best teams in the league, and I think Youngstown this year is one of the best teams in the league. And so to go out there and to battle every down and to push that game in ways that we've got to push it to give ourselves a chance to win will be something that will be a great challenge for our football team.
South Dakota looking for its first ever win against the Penguins on Saturday afternoon. Kickoff at Stambaugh Stadium is set for 3 p.m. Central Time. As always, be sure to follow along for updates at midcosn.com and on Twitter at ElsonMidcoSN. All right, that's it for us. For Kelly Stewart, I'm Jay Elson. We'll see you back here next Wednesday night for another episode of Coyote Corner.